I'm Frank Kanshi. This is The Wave. Thai baht has performed strongly this week as it reached 19-month high. However, Thai baht strength is harming Thailand's export industry and tourism sector. Joining me now is Dr. Kirida Bhaopichitr from Thailand Development Research Institute to discuss the impact of Thai baht appreciation. Thank you for your time, Dr. Kirida.
You're very welcome. Hello,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you. Thank you for your time and appreciate your attendance to our interview. So, of course, in comparison to the first period, the beginning of this year, Thai baht was at the rate of 37 Thai baht against USD, but right now it's around 33. What's your thought? What makes this appreciation, sudden appreciation in this period?
Well, actually, if you look at the Thai baht, from June of this year, at the end of June until today, it has appreciated or it has strengthened by 12% because it went from 37 baht at the end of June until today, as you saw in the news this morning, it's around 32.6 baht to the US
Mm.
dollar. So it has strengthened very quickly over the last 3 months by 12%. Well, the reasons behind it, I would say there are 2 to 3 reasons. Of course, one is how the US dollar is performing, right? Because we are comparing the baht to the US dollar. So if the US dollar weakens, then the baht will strengthen against the US dollar. So I looked at the data for the US dollar from the end of June until today. The US dollar has actually weakened, but it has only weakened by 3%, while the baht, as I mentioned, has strengthened by 12%. That means that there are other factors that have made the baht stronger, right? Because at the end of the day, we're comparing to U.S. dollar, and of course we know the U.S. dollar has weakened because the central bank or the Fed of the United States have started reducing their policy rate, which means interest rates in the U.S. are coming down. So many investors are moving their money out of the U.S., and one of the countries that they move their money to is Thailand. So actually, what is important is also the capital inflows that come into Thailand as well. That actually affects the value of the Thai baht. And if you
Mm.
saw in the last, let's say, a month or so, there have been a lot of inflows coming in through the stock markets, right, to buy Thai stocks because investors are now trying to diversify from the US to Southeast Asia, including Thailand as well. But investments or money coming into the stock market is not the only inflows that Thailand has. Thailand also has capital inflows from other sources, such as from trade, right? Exports minus imports, which is the net exports. So if that
Mm.
goes up, of course, the Thai baht will also be strong because there's more money flowing into the country. Tourism as well, right? If there are more tourists coming into Thailand and they're spending, more, then the baht gets stronger as well because that's another, flow of money into Thailand. And the last channel that I see as a big flow to Thailand, not as big as exports, of course, but it's big, is through investments. Because we're hearing that there are many foreign investors, right, who are investing now in Thailand and opening up factories and businesses. So, these are reasons why the Thai baht has gotten stronger because one, the US dollar has weakened, but also because there's more capital inflows coming into Thailand
Mm.
over the past 2 months.
Yeah, so you talk about, of course, the positive side there. More money inflow, more capital inflow come to Thailand, and of course, tourists they will think about Thailand as a, you know, prime destination for them to come to travel to relax. But I think I would like to talk about the implications. What sector have been affected at this moment, and what are the broader implications to Thailand's Thai baht appreciation? Because of course, we talk about those the competitiveness of export industry, the competitiveness of tourism sector might be affected too. So what's your thought?
Sure. Well, I think competitiveness of any business, whether it be export or tourism, right, depends on many things. One, of course, is exchange rate. Of course, matters to how much they can make because once they receive the money in US dollar, they would need to convert them in Thai baht to use in Thailand, right? So when the Thai baht strengthens, that means that every dollar that they get, when they convert it to Thai baht, they get a smaller amount of Thai baht. So they used to get 37 baht to the
Mm.
dollar, but today they're getting about 32 and a half, right, baht to the US dollar. So that affects their revenues. Because actually, in terms of competitiveness, I would like to think more of the fact that if you're really competitive, right, that means that, even though, the prices of your products might go up by, 5% or 10%, there will still be demand for your products. That means your products
Mm,
or services are really competitive, right? So here, I think there is also an issue, of course, with the competitiveness of, the Thai products or services as well. And when I say this, it's because when you don't really have competitiveness, meaning you can't be the price maker, right? You can't
mm,
actually command a higher price when the baht, strengthens in terms of the US dollar. Then you have to accept whatever your clients or your customers are offering you. And let's
mm,
say they offer you $10, right, for this piece of product. You will have to accept it. And when the baht, as today, strengthens, then you convert it in the $10 into Thai baht. Of course, you get, less Thai baht, right? So
yeah.
that hurts, both exporters and the, inbound, tourist operators, because, they will get, fewer Thai baht when they convert, the US dollars into Thai baht. I think that's where it impacts them most. So I think at the end of the day, we will have to actually think of how do we actually strengthen, right, our core competitiveness of our products and services, so that movements of exchange rates will not, impact us much, because exchange rates move all the time. I was looking
Mm,
back at the Thai baht over the past 2 years, and it has swung, right? It has swung from, even in 2022, we had hit 37 baht to the US dollar,
mm,
actually 38 baht to the US dollar at some point. And then, it swung back up to, 33, strengthened to 33 baht, and they came back down to 36. Now it's back up to 30, 32 and a half. So volatility will always be there, right, for
mm,
exchange rates. And the interesting thing is, the baht usually strengthens. It's like a cycle, but it strengthens more in the last quarter of each year. I think that's because at the last quarter of each year, it's a high season for tourism, so there are more, tourist receipts coming in the last quarter. So, after the last quarter, the Thai baht usually weakens, right? And then
mm.
it starts strengthening, again, towards the middle of the year, and then it then, peaks at the fourth quarter of the year. So, it changes, and it's a cycle, a similar cycle every year. So I think, of course, the impact, the immediate impact, as I mentioned, on exporters and inbound tourist operators, tourism operators, is that when they convert, right, their revenues in US dollar into Thai baht, they will get fewer Thai baht.
Yeah, I think you point out a very good point there, is in the quality of service and quality of product are significant, because no matter what, no matter how the volatility goes, at the end, the quality talks, because no matter of course, those importer from the US, when they see the product in Southeast Asia, they will think that this quality is the main point rather than the price. As you said, the volatility always comes with the global economics atmosphere. When it's hot or when it's cold, it really goes around. But we talk about business side, business leader side, they can cope with it in different ways. But how about the government? Because I think the authorities, no matter the government or the central bank, they need to have some measures to take with it. So how can the authority to mitigate the concerns of the currency strength, and of course already impact some industry in Thailand?
Right. I mean, to me, I don't think we should, intervene in the value
Mm,
of the currency, because we've already committed to a floating exchange rate, right? Meaning that we would let the Thai baht's value, flow according to the market demand and supply of the baht, right? So we're not going back to, trying to fix, the value of the Thai baht to the US dollar like we did before the East
mm,
Asia or the Tom Yam Goong crisis in Thailand. So,
yeah.
the Thai baht will, of course, move with its supply and demand. But what authorities, especially what the Bank of Thailand, can do in terms of the currency value is to just to sort of slow down the volatility. So if it's going to, be stronger, right? What the Bank of Thailand, usually does, it will intervene in order to smooth out the
Mm,
volatility, so that it doesn't strengthen too quickly, right? So, that's the most that they can do, because we're not in the business of now fixing the currency or pegging the currency to any specific value anymore. So I think on the currency, that's what they can do. But of course, on the other side, if exporters are really hurt, or if the inbound tourist operators are really hurt, then there should be other measures, right, to help them, to support them, rather than trying to work with the currency. Because as you know, there's the two sides to the coin, right? If you try to make the currency weaker, then of course our imports will be more expensive, right? So again, there's always pros and cons, right? We import oil, we import natural gas and other raw materials, fertilizers or animal feed. Those will become more expensive, right? If the Thai baht is weak, so that affects the cost of living here in Thailand. So again, there is pros and cons to the currency, but I would think that the best way is to let the currency move at its market value, while the central bank could help mitigate the volatility. But if we really need to support those who are really affected because their incomes have fallen from the baht appreciation, then there should be other sort of targeted measures to help them. But as I mentioned to you, the baht, will, that it will weaken. So,
Yeah.
it's not that it will be at this level, for forever. So again, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, before we end this interview, I think I have to ask this question. As in, of course, on the global stage, we see U.S. Fed, they already cut the 50 basis point from the U.S. side, and this already impacts different countries, like including Thailand. So you talk about central banks measure here. On a, of course, you have been observed the economic trajectory in Thailand for many years. Do you think right now is an appropriate time to cut interest rate in Thailand, no matter it's 25 basis point or a half of percentage in Thailand by central bank?
Well, I think if looking at what the central banks around the world, including Thailand, looks at, right, when they decide if they should raise or cut interest rates, right, they look at what is the future inflation, right, in the next 5 to 6 months, what inflation will be. If inflation looks like it's under control, then of course they will then look next at how's the economy doing, right? If the economy is not doing too well, then there might be a scope for reducing the policy rate, right? Because inflation is not an issue, but growth is not really picking up, so maybe reducing the policy rate will be a good idea. And now, in addition, right, the gap between the U.S. interest rate and our interest rate have now also narrowed, because the U.S. Central bank has reduced its policy rate. So to me, I think we can actually see a 0.25% reduction in our policy rate by the end of the year. I think that could happen. If inflation, as you see, is not going to be very high. The baht is strong, so that also helps with inflation. As I mentioned, when the baht is strong, then our imports become cheaper, right, in terms of the baht price. And also the economy is still not picking up very well. So those are things, including financial stability. These are things that the Bank of Thailand or the policy, the Monetary Policy Committee, looks at. So I think when you look at all these metrics, right, I think there could be a one-time reduction in policy rate at the end of the year by 0.25%.
Yeah, and of course, as what you said, reducing the policy rate or interest rate by 25 basis point could also mitigate the crisis, the impact too, about the strength of Thai baht. So of course, businessmen, business leaders, they want to see the cut as soon as possible, but we will wait the central bank for the Monetary Policy Committee to talk about it in October and December for two-time meeting too. Thank you for your time, Dr. Kirida Bhaopichitr here. Thank you. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.